Hello and welcome to ArtShow. I'm Craig Stover, and today I have with me Tim McFarlane. Hey, Tim, how are you today?
I'm good, Craig. Great to be here.
I am excited for today. I got some good stuff, good questions lined up for you. But I want to
Excellent.
start where I normally do. I want to share some of your work with our audience. So I went online, and you have a giant website, and I selected some pieces that I thought were most interesting to me.
Cool.
So I wanted to start with this piece. This is a smaller piece, correct?
Yeah, it's 36 by 36 inches.
Okay, so that's still kind of small compared to some of your
To
giant
some of
paintings
them, yeah,
that
exactly.
you
Yeah.
do. So the reason I chose this one is I thought this was a great example of. I often tell people that artists, when you're buying a painting, you're really buying a time period of the artist's thoughts. And I
Right.
just see so many changes in this particular painting. So much, there's a lot of layering, but there's a lot of thinking going on with this painting. Uh,
hmm
is, do you have a story behind this picture? Is there anything that I should know about it?
So this painting was done in around 2013. It may have been from 2012, but I'm pretty sure it was 2013. And this painting was very different from some of the other ones I was doing at the time, mainly because of that inset that you see in there, that diagonal line, and then the other line that comes down, and all that, like that brown background. I had never, up until this point, I hadn't done anything like that. And
Mm,
there was a different sense of the space breaking up that I found really exciting.
hmm
So yeah, and that's why, and also there was like this weird thing where some of the lines on, like, on the right hand side come across, and they're a little larger, closer to the viewer, and it
hmm
almost felt like a mirror.
hmm
And so that's why, hence the title, Pink Mirror.
Are you? These are acrylics.
These are all acrylics. Yeah, that's all I
Uh,
use.
okay. Why do you use just acrylics?
So I learned painting with using oils and everything, but I got
Hmm
to a certain point where I had more ideas than oil paint could, like, sufficiently handle at one time.
Is that the layering that
It's the
that
layering,
appreciate?
it's the drying time.
Hmm
So mainly it was I'm kind of impatient, so it was the drying time more than anything.
I totally
Um,
understand. Well,
Yeah, yeah. And then also there got to be a point where it was just oil paints. Acrylics are easier to handle
yeah,
and to
yeah,
clean
quite
up and
quite a
everything
bit. I
too.
find artists tend to fall in two camps. Either it's about the toxicity of oil, or it's about the
Mhm.
immediacy of acrylic.
Yeah, it's the immediacy. I mean, I've been thinking about oils again, but it's the immediacy.
Yeah, and I can see it in this particular piece that I'm showing you
hmm
now. That sort of layering.
hmm
My question with this was in your process, was it always intended with this white curtain on top of it, or was that like an aha moment?
No, it was more. I was doing at this point. I was doing a lot of paintings like this that had these, like, these field like elements happening, and I think, like, midway through the painting, I got that idea of, like, bringing up that white area on top,
Mhm.
um, and I think part of it came from this idea of, like, like fog and whatever, and I had all these colors underneath, and things weren't quite gelling how I wanted them to.
Mhm.
And by the time I got to this, I was like, oh, okay, I think I know how to resolve this.
Mhm.
And so that's basically what happened. I mean, in a lot of my paintings, there's a lot of chance happenings.
Mhm.
There's no preset plan, so
Mhm.
things happen, and I do them, and they work or they don't.
I particularly like what's peeking out at the bottom of this. For me, it's
Mhm.
all about the bottom. The bottom makes the top, right?
Right, right.
So there's got all that kind of, and I can't help but think of. I first learned that from looking at early Jasper Johns, where he would paint stuff but leave that little bit on the
Mhm.
bottom showing all that work that was done on the top.
Right, right. And actually some of, like, Bryce Martin's
Yeah,
earlier works too.
yeah.
You had a little sliver of, like, you know, stuff happening in the background along the bottom there.
Right. Like that's the truth part. Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah. It was like a way of like letting viewers into the painting, I think, in a different way.
So this does it in a different way. Instead of leaving it on the bottom, it's you got to look through to see
Hmm.
the start of this picture. So I
Yeah.
know that this is a brand new piece for you, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. And this is quite large.
Yeah. This is like 84. This is like 63 by like 84, I think.
So my question to you about this is I've seen small works of yours and I've seen large works of yours. The size difference really helps dictate a completely different conversation you're having with your audience.
Hmm.
Do you have a preference for what the size that you're working with?
No, no.
Okay.
I mean, it really kind of depends. So for me, like when I'm working on larger paintings, there's a whole different type of movement that's going on, and a whole different relationship with all the elements that are happening in there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I've always tended to work in a variety of sizes, a variety of scale.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and one of the things that I've always done with my small paintings is like I've always sort of like envisioned them like kind of large. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes some of my smaller paintings can have a feeling of being bigger than what they are in terms
Mm-hmm.
of actual size. But in this one, yeah, I definitely wanted to take advantage of that big field I had.
Yeah.
And the challenge for me in this was leaving all that stuff in the foreground kind of open so that you can see a lot more through
Mm-hmm.
background.
I ask that question because sometimes when I see artwork that's really big, that's the only thing it kind of has going for it because when you
Mhm.
shrink it down, they don't work sometimes, but
Mhm.
this still works, right?
Yeah,
So for
thanks.
me, it's really the addition of it's the white structure that you have that's just underneath the red. To me,
Mhm.
that's what makes this picture.
Yeah, thanks.
So I'm kind of curious about was the red part that final was that always like okay that's the cherry on the cake or did the white not work enough for you? What was that thought idea behind that?
No, so I knew that. I mean, by the time I got to the white part, I knew that there was something else that was going to go on top. It was a matter of what and
Mm-hmm.
what color.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at everything else I had there, I felt like, you know, this reddish color would be the thing that would like kick it off, that would take it to another level.
Well, I like these new shapes that you're using. They're very motion driven. You
Yeah,
know,
thanks.
there's a lot. It's funny because I talk to students about the old masters developing a picture so your eye would go in and out of the picture in certain ways, and
Right.
you're able to do that in an abstract way because it's like every time my eye goes out, it gets sucked back in again.
But that's good. That's one of the things that I've always liked about other artists' work that drew me to them. So I can come back again and again, and I try to bring that same sort of feeling into my work.
So here we have a piece that this is actually the kind of work that I was first introduced to your work by,
Hmm.
and the language of this it's I can't help but think about like a crowded room of people. There's
Hmm.
just so many conversations in this
Right.
at one time.
Right.
This is a little bit earlier, correct?
Yeah, this is from 2021.
Okay.
I mean 20. Wait a minute. I'm sorry. 2022. Sorry.
Okay. That's
So
like, I'm
yeah.
not holding you to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you
um,
produce so much; it's hard to keep all that stuff straight. Yeah, I totally get it.
it's wild.
So there's my question about this one is you have this sort of knotted feature,
Mhm.
this line that knots into itself,
Mhm.
which became sort of a prominent thing in your work, but it doesn't appear as often anymore. Is it just because you're trying to find new shapes to work with, or what?
Yeah, yeah, it's really just that. I mean, the forms you're talking about, I call them glyphs.
Okay.
petroglyph or hieroglyph,
Mhm.
because they're meant to resemble writing, but I didn't want them to be actual letters. So
Mhm.
yeah, I had been working with this for about like, I don't know, 8-ish years or so.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I just got to a point recently where I was just, where I was just like, okay, I need to, my brain was just telling me I need to, like go off and do something else.
Uh-huh.
And I was more interested in like bringing and getting back to some other forms that I had started playing around with years ago and bringing them back into the picture. So,
Mm. But for me, what works in this picture, it's really the rest areas of those light blues, that
yeah,
you have all that going on around, but you can
right.
just kind of take a little breather in that
A little
spot.
breather. Yeah, exactly.
I
Yeah.
really like that. And we have to
Yeah.
have a bigger conversation because I too am interested in hieroglyphs.
Oh,
And
cool.
Mayan is what I'm really kind of interested with. So we'll talk later about that.
Okay.
But I've got, let's see, no, I think that was it. Sorry, I thought I had one. So I want to start this conversation where I start a lot of conversations. I want to start at your beginning.
Okay.
So I'm kind of curious, at what point did you know that you were going to become an artist?
When I was in high school, I was about like 16, 17 years old, in the upper level art course at my high school. And that was pretty much it. My high school art teacher really loved impressionism and whatnot. And basically at that point, I saw other kids starting to find their niche. And for me, art was like where I felt like I belonged, and I
Mhm.
felt like I really excelled at. I mean,
So
I did
you
well
always knew.
in other subjects, but this was the alchemy of art is what really drew me. Taking these materials, this one type of material, and making whole other things with those materials that shouldn't be able to happen.
Uh-huh. So did when you decided that, was it full support from friends and family?
Well, I should explain that, like, by the time I was in high school, my family, it was just me, my mom, my dad. I was an only child.
Okay.
And my father had passed away when I was 15. And my mom was like, she had, some issues of her own. So basically, I was kind of on my own.
Okay.
But my friends that I had around me did support me,
Okay.
as well as like classmates and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool.
Sometimes I ask that question and I'm surprised, like, no, everybody told me to, don't
Right.
do art, kind of a thing.
Exactly.
So, and they showed them anyway. Um, I want to talk a little bit about your process
Mhm.
because I think it's so fascinating, especially as an abstract painter. Um, when you're approaching a work, first off, do you sketch out your ideas at all, or is the canvas the sketch?
The canvas is the body where almost everything gets done on. I do make drawings and works on paper and sketches and whatnot, but
Hmm.
there's no one-to-one translation.
Hmm.
So there's always like, if I'm looking for ideas, or if I'm stuck, I'll look back at something. There might be two or three different things that get translated to a canvas, but it's never like a one-to-one sketch, drawing,
Hmm.
and then painting.
Do you find yourself at some point where things just aren't working? Do you ever abandon your work or destroy it, or do
So
you
there's a
keep
lot of
going?
stuff that happens. My practice is one that I tend to work on several things at one time.
Okay.
So sometimes when I'm like I might be working on, say, like three paintings at one time.
Okay.
So there might be something that I might have a problem with the first one. I'll put it aside and I'll go
Uh,
to the second or third one. And sometimes, like in the middle of working on those, or sometimes if I finish one of those, then a light bulb will go off and be like, oh, wait, I know how to deal with that first one now, and I'll go back to it.
right.
Other times I have just like, abandoned things because I learned what I could learn, and it wasn't, for me, it wasn't, going to like get exhibited or anything. So I'm like, all right, I'm reusing this panel.
Uh-huh.
I tend to work on birch panels as well as canvas. My
Hmm.
smaller works are usually on panels, and my larger ones are on canvas for
Hmm.
more practical reasons than anything else,
Do you
because.
ever visit really old work? Like, okay, this is no longer
Oh yeah,
working
yeah,
for
that
me.
happens all the time. So
Yeah.
I'll tell you, like, it's happened twice. Well, it's happened more than twice, but the glyphs,
Uh-huh.
the knots, that actually started for me back in like 1999,
Hmm.
and I was thinking about using text in my work, but I didn't want people reading the paintings. There
Uh-huh.
were artists who were already good at that.
Yeah.
Um,
I
like
know what you
Glenn
mean.
Barbara
I used to do
Kruger.
that with words too.
Yeah.
I stopped doing it because I was like, well, wait, I'm only reaching English speaking people. So like,
Right.
I was trying to, I want a
Right.
bigger audience. I
Yeah.
want to know about your creative process. Can you tell me briefly, like, how do you think it's changed over the years? How you approach making new work?
Um,
Or is
wow.
it the same?
It's a combination of being, yeah, it's pretty much the same. Like I've always had this thing about like I said, working things out. No, it has changed. Okay. So back in the early 2000s, I was making a lot of more rectilinear kind of work, like Sean Scully-ish,
Mm-hmm.
like paintings. They were very architectonic and whatnot. So those, I have sketchbooks here actually that where there's like page after page after page of like proposed, like things that I did,
Mm-hmm.
sketches that I did. But again, there was no one-to-one translation. There was always like, okay, that works, that works, that works, and then I would go to the painting. Recently, I have gone back to a sort of not. There's a little bit more planning in some of the newer paintings, like from the last year or so.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because I'm working with this triangular shape, and there's all the layering. So there's a little bit more planning in that, but there's a huge amount of chance that's happening. Chance
Mm-hmm.
has always been a part of my work.
So the term I've come across lately is psychic automatism. That's the abstract
Oh,
expressionist. That's what they used to use. So I
okay.
think you've got a kind of bit of that because you're not walking in with a plan. You're kind of letting your
Yeah.
subconscious go a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. So I mean, I might know what shapes I'm using, you know what I
Right.
mean, like the glyphs or these triangular shapes. But other than that, yeah, I'm starting off with a color. I'm putting something down here, put something down here. So there's a lot of call and response that's going.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot going on in the noggin, and you got to get
Right,
that out
right.
on the canvas.
Yeah. And
So
it
the what?
starts off, go ahead.
Good.
Oh, I was going to say, like the way I work, it might start off kind of quick, but then as I go along, there's a lot more intention that's involved. So even though something may look like it was, finished in like an hour, that might
Right.
have, taken a much longer time because I'm taking like, instead of like work, I'm like, there's like more like 10 minutes between each time
Mm-hmm.
I'm making a mark or something
Right. Right.
as I go along.
So the one question that I was really excited to, or not really question, area I really wanted to talk to you about is color.
Oh, cool.
Can you tell me your thoughts about color?
Sure. I've always loved color.
Okay.
And color. So I go back and forth between making works that are black and white or tonal as well as color. So
Mm-hmm.
the two of them have equal excitement for me in terms of ideas. But color has always been something that has attracted me ever since. And like I said, I cut my teeth basically on impressionism, and then later on abstract expressionism, and then also people like Cezanne and so forth. And
Do you consider yourself like experimenting with color, or are you using color more like a weapon?
for me, it's more like experimentation. You know, there is a consideration of like, oh, that's kind of cool. So let me make this a little warmer. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So
Mm-hmm.
there's those sorts of considerations. But other than that, I'm just like, and another thing that happens, that has happened that I'm kind of grappling with now actually is that I almost never use black
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
in my color work. My darker colors are
Mm-hmm.
usually just like a darker blue that might
Yeah.
have some black in it, or it might be black, but there might be a lot of like other colors mixed in.
Sounds like you're looking at a lot of late Delacroix.
Possibly.
Because he didn't know. Well, we talked about black and white a little bit, and I think that for me, when I see those works of yours, I
Mhm.
see them. What the strength of those is the structure that you're building in. The
Thanks.
color has another language, another vocabulary that you're adding on top of it, but
Right.
color can't take you very far unless you have that strong structure underneath.
Right.
I mean, I can see it in a certain way, but I'm kind of curious. Do you think about your audiences when you're making the work? And if
No,
so, no, you don't think about them. Is there?
no, I don't. If I did think about that, I wouldn't be able to make any work.
Okay,
You know what I
paralyzed.
mean? I
Is there
mean,
anything
go
is
ahead.
there anything that you hope your audiences walk away with?
Oh yeah, I hope that they're able to like walk away with a feeling that they discovered something new and that they're curious about what it is that I'm doing,
Okay.
and that they can hopefully come back to the work.
Have you ever had people who own your work come at you years later with questions about it?
Not so far, no.
Okay. I'm just kind of curious about,
Yeah, yeah,
arts
absolutely, yeah.
education is a weird thing in this country anymore. So people are, I find they're always very hungry, but
Right. Yeah, you
sometimes
just
they're not
never
hungry
know.
at
Yeah, no,
all.
I haven't actually gotten that yet.
Okay. When you're in your studio
Mhm.
and you're going to make something new, is there anything that you as a go-to to sort of ignite your creativity?
A lot of times it's just like older work, just seeing that there's something different that I might be able to do with something. So I've been making work for a long time now. So there's this backlog of stuff that I have. And, and again, like I said earlier, a lot of times I'll, look at older ideas that I abandoned and
Hmm.
see if there's like some new way that I can use
Something
them.
in
Yeah,
that.
exactly. And then also I'm like looking at other things. I'm looking at other artists' work. I'm just like seeing what people are doing and then like seeing if there's something that I might, be able to bring into my work. But most of the time it's me just appreciating more than anything.
Do you have
But I do
any?
have like a lot of books here and I'll like go through like once in,
Okay.
I'm like, okay, Richard Diebenkorn, what you got for me? Okay,
I don't know about
Cy,
you.
Cy
Every
Twombly.
time I go to the museum, I can't leave until I steal one thing, right? Like,
Right.
oh, that's a brush mark or a color or something like
There you
that.
go.
I know
Yeah.
exactly what you mean.
Yep.
Um, when you're in your studio and you're about to start something new, so you've got all your materials. Do you have any studio rituals? Is there a way that you always approach work? And
Um,
I'll give you an example. I've got
yeah,
one of my favorites is I had an artist who told me, well, she turns on NPR, she makes
right.
herself a cup of tea and a half a tuna sandwich. And that's her like rich, she can't work without them. Is there
Oh,
anything like
okay.
that you do kind of that's strange like that?
No, I mean, okay, so I mean, when I come in, I'm not jumping right into everything. I have to settle in. So I'll
Okay.
come in, I'll, take off my jacket or whatever. And so I'll first, one of the first things I'll do is I'll decide if I want to listen to music first or if I want to listen to a podcast first. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
sort of thinking about what I'm doing and where I'm at in something because
Mm-hmm.
each thing has its own effect on what
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing. So sometimes a podcast, depending on what I'm doing in the work, a podcast can be take up too much like brain
Mm-hmm.
energy.
Right, right.
Yeah, or and then other times I can have a podcast on and then maybe I'm just like stretching canvas or I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
something
Mm-hmm.
else. Or music also, it depends, my mood. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I find
So
most artists need something to distract them that's subconscious, otherwise it takes over.
yeah, I don't know. Sometimes no, sometimes I do come in and I'll go a long while in silence.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, which is actually great. It's nice to just like be with your thoughts sometimes, at least for me.
Yeah, no, that's true. I have the same thing. In fact, now I find myself painting in silence and realizing, oh, it's how long has it been? Look,
Right,
I need some music. Whoops,
right.
kind of a thing. I see your work, your process being done in layers,
Mhm.
which to me is a very printmaker kind of way to approach an image.
Yeah.
Have you explored printmaking at all,
Oh yeah.
or other disciplines, sculpture, poetry, dance,
Yeah.
anything like that?
Yeah. So printmaking was like a big thing for me when I was in school.
What kind?
I loved traditional stone lithography and whatnot. That was a big
I
thing for
see.
me.
Okay.
And I think what happened for me is that when I started working with acrylics, I noticed the differences between working with acrylics and working with oils. And the fastest way that I could get acrylics to work for me was to work in layers because, yeah, just that was it. So my love of printmaking kind of like came in there and just like, okay,
Hmm.
I can do this. There's other ways that I use acrylics there where it can almost be like, using oils, but more almost invariably I wind up thinking in layers. So that's
Would
just
you
what
ever do like an entire show of prints?
what's
Would
that
that?
again?
Would you ever consider an entire show of just prints?
Oh yeah, if I got a chance to make some more, yeah.
Okay.
I did a series of prints a couple of years ago in 2021 through the Brandywine workshop um called Tomorrow's Conversations, and I really loved that. I worked with with a master printer and
Hmm.
everything.
That's
He had
helpful.
well, well, the other thing is that these were woodcut prints. So he had a router that could a digital router that could, carve everything out within like a couple of days, as opposed to like me, I probably would have still been working on those things.
Yeah, but doesn't that eliminate all the happy accidents?
Right. Well, no, I mean, they actually came out. They're still like kind of like different than I would have thought. You know what I mean?
Okay. So
Yeah,
you still get that a little bit of that
a
in
little
there.
bit. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well,
It
I've got
wasn't
time for just
perfect.
two more questions.
Sure.
The first one is I'm curious when you're working in a painting
Hmm.
and you're in the zone, are you like, is your brain firing on all cylinders or is it not firing at all?
My brain is usually firing on all cylinders.
Okay. All right.
Kind of like I got like I always tell people I'm like when they ask me what I'm thinking about when I'm painting, I'm like I'm thinking about dinner. I'm thinking about how this
Okay.
space is looking in the painting. I'm thinking about like what I need to do next week.
Okay.
Laundry, whatever. So there's all sorts of what I'm listening to. There's all sorts of things going on up there.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm usually like I'm all over the place.
I asked that question and it seems logical the answer, but I get very different answers sometimes. There's
Mhm.
quite a few artists who's like, no, I don't think about anything. It's almost like they're doing that highway hypnosis when they're driving. Like, how did I get there?
Right,
Sometimes
right,
I
right.
have artists that answer that
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
So,
Well, actually, I mean, it does. It's a little bit of both because, like, I do get to a place where, like, there's like, you know, there's just this zone, and I can't explain it. Like you said, the highway,
right.
and it's just like, okay, wait a minute. It's been how long since I ate?
Right. Yeah, it's your body telling you to stop.
Exactly.
Final question. Question
Mhm.
I ask all artists. What does making art do for you?
Oh my God. Making art just like fills me with a lot of joy because I'm translating these, random thoughts that I have, you know what I mean, amongst other things that I've taken in, experiences. And, I'm making them in a physical form. Um, I don't know. There's nothing more magical than that. Art is magic.
Perfect. I like that. Well, Tim, I can't thank you enough for coming by and talking with me today. Boy, time flew by.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. And also, everybody who's tuned in to watch today's art show, we really love your support. We love it if you like and share. Of course, subscribing really helps the most. And please, if you have comments, put them in the comments section. We want to hear from you. If you have a question I can't answer, I'll pass it along. So again, thank you for everything. And Tim, thanks for coming by today. I really
Oh, you're
appreciate it.
welcome. Great to be here, and thanks for having me. I
All right, no
appreciate it,
problem.
Craig.
Appreciate it. Take care, everyone.
All right.